Hi, I'm Amanda Morrison, and I'm the owner of iCollect and Guardian Credit Services. I simplify debt recovery through software automation and human action. I'm really proud of what I do. I think what we offer is a great software solution, but also really good outcomes for our clients because debt collection is typically something that most people don't want to talk about. Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about your debtors because you can't just sweep it all under the carpet. You want to get paid? Let's come up with a solution and make it happen.
I think it's a really good point. Yeah, it's a topic that can be sometimes a bit taboo, right? Asking for money. But it's definitely something that needs to be done, especially if people owe you money. We're not all banks.
No, and you can't. I think people always forget the level of emotional toll that debtors can take into a business, not just on the owner, but the people actually doing the collecting, the abuse that can come down the phone, the difficult clients, the no answers. It's like going out on a date and being rejected all the time, constantly, but in a work environment, it's awful. So,
It's tough.
there's sometimes, how am I going to get myself paid? And tactics can I try? How is this person going to take me seriously? Or this company? Are they about to go into liquidation and I don't know about it? What do I do then? The stress of the unknown. There's just so much more at play when it comes to debtors. People need to get comfortable with going. It's just a crappy conversation that needs to happen. It's crappy things you have to do to sometimes consistently be a parent to somebody and say, you need to pay me. You're not putting in the dishwasher. You're telling them without telling them off, and you're just trying to get them to pay. It's a natural part of business, but if you can avoid even getting debtors in the first place, that's what I want for people. How can you improve your systems? How can you be better business operators? Or how can you take payments up front before anything goes out the door so you don't even need debt collection? Because I don't want it for people. It's crap.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely not something anyone really wants to deal with. But you just got to have those hard conversations sometimes, right? The truth needs to meet reality sometimes, and that's just the way it is.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what, with what Paidnice does, it's really good how you have that software automation that brings in all the processes that I ask our clients to do before they get to us, because your business is only as successful as your systems. If you're not in a great operational structure, if you have to take debtors on, what does that look like for the debt collection side of things? If you've got a process you followed, then it's way easier for the likes of us at Guardian and iCollect to go, look, these are the steps. So now you're in a really good position to do this. Where if you haven't done those steps before, we actually go back and say to some people, look, send this blurb in your email. Let's see what the response is. Then come talk to us. Just we don't want to complicate things, and neither do you guys with what you do. So it's that simple.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the first one around best practices that you've come across. From your experience, what are some of the most effective practices businesses can adopt to improve their accounts receivable and debtor process?
What are the best, Ralph? What are the best practices? Number one, terms and conditions, robust terms and conditions that include debt recovery charges and a clear outline. If you do not pay invoices, people want to know up front. And if you haven't done that, then you're in no man's land. A really good plan around, good accounting software, whatever it may be, and a really good follow-up process. What days are you going to follow up an email invoice? What days are you going to text, call, email? What do they all say? And then after you've done that, you move on to okay, well, what are we going to do if we need debt collection? And how does that then work in with staff? And if someone's being really difficult, what is your plan around handling really rude people on the other end of the phone?
How do you deal with the difficult situations, like difficult conversations? Would you say it's probably more like accepting the reality of that you're just going to have that tough conversation with the client sometimes?
Yeah. And part of that is, going, okay, what do I want as an outcome from this? What am I prepared to negotiate on? Am I prepared to take a discount? Am I prepared to organize a payment plan? How am I going to work with this person so that I'm not going up against them? How can I work with them so we all get a result out of it?
Yeah, that really leads into the next one. What are some of the common misconceptions or overlooked strategies or different tactics that you could use to take care of that?
The overlooked strategies, I would say, is more people's perceptions of what they are allowed and aren't allowed to do. Some people think, well, I'm allowed to just go and bowl up to somebody's house and knock on the door and tell them their thoughts. Where actually, why don't you just start with the softly approach and maybe just professionally go, here's an email, follow up with a text in a few days. But mainly, most people are just terrified of picking up the phone. They'll do emails and texts, and people can avoid those. You do have the bullshit ones who, will show up at the business and literally sit in the reception and not leave. I actually know some horrendous stories, and I just go, oh, I can't talk about that one. So it just depends on people's confidence levels. But the main thing is to actually have confidence and not to shy away from having those conversations, because that is probably the big thing that gets overlooked. You actually need a bit of gumption to get in there and go, hi, I know this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but when are you going to pay my invoice?
And let's jump into the next one. So key challenges in AR management. What are the biggest challenges that your clients typically face when managing AR and debtors?
The biggest challenges with AR and debtors is often people not understanding the process, because they've gone into business, they understand their product or whatever it may be, but they don't necessarily have done a lot of training in and they've got their accountant managing their accounts, but they don't put too much thought into the fact that they need a system or a process to follow up. And that is probably one of the biggest weaknesses. I say to people, look, just send me what you're currently doing as your process to follow up. And quite often they'll say this, and I go, there's some holes here, and here. And so mainly it's just fixing the holes in what people have already got, because they think what they've got is enough, but it's not necessarily enough.
How do these challenges impact their business operations, cash flow, and client relationships?
Having robust systems for accounts receivable, cash flow, and client relationships is essential. If you are doing the right follow-ups at the right time and being consistent with what your terms of trade say, then when you make those calls or you're doing an email follow-up, nothing's a surprise to the client, because they've already been educated around what they need to do. So therefore, you're maintaining that client relationship, because you're saying, well, I'm following up on exactly what I said I do. So they can't get annoyed at that. It's then putting them in the boat going, oh, actually, I'm in the wrong in this part of the relationship, not them. So that means you're in a much more powerful position when you're, stating your piece. I think when it's disorganized and you don't have the terms and conditions, or you don't have something on the bottom of your invoice saying this is when I expect payment to be made, you start going, well, I'm asking for payment. And they go, well, there's no this or that at the bottom. That's when you start going, was I in the wrong? Was I doing something? And then you feeling like you shouldn't be asking. And then you've got this situation. The other thing is also just how that customer journey went before it led up to the invoice being sent. That's another big one, because if you're not picking up red flags along that customer journey experience, then by the time they get an invoice and they don't want to pay it, they might be really pissed off about something with it earlier, and you've already got a really bad setting for a really awkward conversation. So, that's sort of, it's just being consistent. And that's why systems, processes, and understanding before you get to chasing for debtors is important.
That's right. That's a really good point. It's something that it's funny you say that, because we get asked this a lot at Paidnice around how will, all of the stuff impact, like, say, charging late fees and stuff like this. Like, I don't want to charge late fees. And to your earlier point around charging, well, no one wants to pick up their phone and ask their clients for money. It's like a very bizarre thing. But the really interesting thing that we've started to see is, to the point that you made, when you have, like, say, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to implement the system. It's going to charge you late fees. This is actually my payment policy. If it's 21 days overdue, then there's going to be an interest charge. Yeah. The system does it for you. And they receive it, and then they pick up the phone, funnily enough, to you. And now you can look like the hero for removing the charge for them. It's kind of a funny thing where the charge is actually improving the client relationship, and we're seeing that a lot. So it's really interesting.
I'm pleased to hear it's not just me.
Yeah, it's happening. I'd love to hear about some of those wild stories that you mentioned. Could you share a success story where a client's AR process has significantly improved after the work that you've done, or at least work that you've done with them?
Because iCollect's on the Xero App Store, we have made we've got API connections that work incredibly well, but for those that are just running as sort of the ad hoc debts coming in, they link with Xero, pull in their debts, and then want to pull them all through automation. They are just loving the fact that they're in a software program that's already working incredibly well for them. If they've followed their processes of whatever they've got, they can just pull everything through. They are then not having to talk to anyone. They manage the whole process themselves. The debt letters go out. It's all done by automation. We've structured it so that the client can't go and screw it up for themselves. They might go, oh, I really want to be able to do this. And we go, no, we're saving you from yourself. And the outcomes, like within the first 1 to 2 weeks, we have like 65% success rate because there's no commission. So the benefit of having automation software is that we can offer no commission. Therefore, the client is getting that threat of a letter without going, oh my God, I have to pay another 23%. Or the client doesn't have to go, oh, I'm paying my money. I'm getting all of my money back and I'm not having to sacrifice some of the commission money. So they're getting all of the original invoice. So they're loving the simplicity of it, that you can get the weight in this experience without having to talk to anyone. They're like, software's great.